For the account, record on the cloud or on the computer? Do you want me to record to the cloud straight to that account, to the official account?
Yeah, so it depends on you. If you would be able to share, if you want to record on the computer, it's fine. So it will mean you would have to download to like Google Drive and share, or if you have anywhere. But it's okay if you also want to record on the cloud.
Okay, fantastic. So we have Akin, we have our speaker for today, Mr. Akin Osofisan. Just a little housekeeping. I like that everybody already has their microphone muted. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, Jessica, once again. Adebola, I like the smile. Bolanle, please show your face. Damola, will be nice to see you. Adenike, I haven't seen you in a while. Last bonfire, you couldn't attend. Let's see your face. Oma, will be nice to see you. Fadike would also be nice to see you. Just, let's just see you before you disappear back to the background. So let's just have a feel of your presence, and then it's okay for you to turn off your video for the rest of the conversation, and you can pop it back on when you feel like you really want to connect in person. So I'm just going to, and then we have to also.
Am I able to also turn off my camera? Just joking.
No, we do not give you the permission to, we refuse to allow you. So
Okay,
is someone just coming in? Someone just said oh, Bolanle was going off. Okay, so a little intro on Mr. Akin Osofisan. Mr. Akin Osofisan is a man of many versatile parts. Yeah. From being a retail person to being a security, to a technology expert, and the technology runs across cybersecurity, technology, ad and software. At least I knew that I met him in the ad and the software days. In the ad and software days, he's also gone through the process of change management. He's versatile with insurance, all aspects of insurance, retail, a bit of underwriting, customer sales, customer service. Yes, he's also been the head of customer service, also bank assurance. So I don't know how to say that in layman to say bank assurance, but then he's also had experience, with bank assurance. So the very many aspects of insurance, his experience. So from being back end to front end to customer relations, he does have that experience, and then change management also. And he continues to be well-grounded in in technology, and now he's moved on to from the hardware to software to cybersecurity. So he's had quite a number of transitions, both within an industry and across industries. And also not just across industry, also across countries. So it's going to be able to share with us, the experience, lesson, insight, things that you can look out for. Because one thing that I picked up, I'm just going to relate it to an interview that was shared on the UK Camp Adulam group about a fantastic person, Dr. Adiola Olubameji. She's the founder of a STEM foundation here in Canada. One key thing that she said in an interview when I read it was, she said, I knew this was the future. I knew 4.0 was the future. I knew how to position myself. Having looked at, what she said was the future, she also knew how to position herself that, okay, I would go into 3D printing amongst all that is available as the future industry. So I do know that Mr. Osofisan speaking to us today, there are quite a number of things that he knows, and that can help us also identify what we need to know. And so we can position ourselves correctly, appropriately, strategically, significantly for our transition as immigrants in our various places, because there are different people here from various parts, of North America. So welcome, Mr. Akin Osofisan. So you have the floor. So you welcome. I see that you've joined. I am really glad to have you here. So as we listen to you, we would glean insight, we would have increased understanding, and then your words will be flawless as is given to you to speak by the Spirit. So welcome.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you very much, Camp Hadulam. Thank you very much, Okwemiko, for having me here today. It's a beautiful, beautiful day in the UK here. I hope we are all having or enjoying such good weather. What they say is that you are usually, I mean, it's those closest to you that sort of get you to do things. I've known Okwemiko for such a long time, and so she managed to sort of get me to come and do this. But it's a pleasure coming here today. Okwemiko, I've just sort of put together some slides which I thought may sort of help us through. So if you're able to give me permission to share the screen so that I can talk through the slides, and hopefully we can get to the interactive part where I mean I can get to talk to people rather than just feeling like doing a lecture.
Oh, absolutely. So I will get to that immediately.
So if you could just make him co-host, then he'll be able to share his slide. He will be able to share screen.
Oh yes, so I will just make you co-host, which is which then allows you to navigate as you need. So now you're co-host, Akin.
Okay, let me try it out. Wonderful. Can you see my screen? Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. So like I said, thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure speaking and sharing with people. It's for me, I hope it's going to be interactive because every opportunity for me is a school day, is a learning opportunity. As much as I want to share, I also sort of want to learn from all of us because we're all on a journey. First things first, when I got this topic, I've got a little issue with this topic because it says career transition as an immigrant. It sort of supposes that transition is an end. But I like to say, look, it's a continuous process. You're never going to, at least for me, personal opinion, in terms of how do you get to the point of transition. It keeps changing, the environment keeps changing, and so you always need to keep adapting. So that is out of the way. Who am I? Okwemiko has spent a lot of conversations around this, so I won't go into that anymore. So a few things first. I'll be speaking in personal capacity, not representing any organizations that I belong to. My views represent Akin Osofisan's views alone. I'll also be drawing on personal experience. And please, by no means am I an expert. I know I've done a lot of transition, but I don't consider myself an expert in any way. Some of the things I've tried to put together is really around hindsight view, because sometimes, or I felt this way when I've attended a few of these things, you sort of feel that, ooh, when I was doing this, did I really think about this? Some of it that I'm talking about today is really around hindsight. So I don't think anyone gets it all from the beginning, but we're always able to learn from each other as we go ahead. And I put like a parking zone, which is really around if there are questions I'm not able to answer today, should in case. What I can promise is that I'll come back, I can go back, research those questions or those views, and then come back to answer. So I just wanted to put that out there first. Objective, to share some thoughts with you on how one may approach this issue of transition. I wasn't able to get a view of where most people are in terms of, are people changing, transitioning from outside the country into the country, or within jobs, or all of that. So I've just sort of tried to look for a catch-all to try and speak to as many people as possible. And I'm hoping the questions will sort of cover any areas I haven't sort of covered. I'm also hoping perhaps we may provoke some thoughts or actions, and hopefully, which is why I decided to do some slides, perhaps leave some practical steps in terms of how we want to approach this. And again, just from having dealt with a lot of consulting people, strategy, it wouldn't be complete if I didn't come up with a model. So I felt, how do we structure this conversation? And I thought a model would suffice. So thinking about transitioning, I thought, look, what are those key phases one may need to go through as you transition, and what are those processes or practical steps within each phase, as it were? And I thought of the first phase is the discovery phase, which we'll talk about a bit more. And then the next stage is the build phase, and then implementation phase, and then how do you sustain that? And it's not really a sequential stage. One may flow into the other, or one may sort of skip to the other, depending on where you are in this journey. And it's sort of like a continuous sort of process. And so it's not sequential in any way. And I know some of those steps that are put in may or may not fall strictly within each phase, but bear with me, this is just to allow us to structure this conversation. So what's the first phase is the discovery phase. So in this phase, I was thinking about this, and this is really about me thinking of what happened when I came into the UK a few years ago, when I was transitioning from a career in Nigeria and then coming over to the UK as fresh. What did I need to ask myself first? Some of these things were done subconsciously, but as I was preparing for this, a few of these things started becoming clearer to me. So I think the first one was, who are you? This sort of question you want to answer to yourself. And why is this critical? Why did I put this here? And again, this is from personal experience. When I came into the country, the first group of people that I had interactions with, they meant well, but they didn't know my journey. They didn't know where I was. And so they were making suggestions into what I should be doing as a career. A few of the things they mentioned, they were okay. I just felt, so for example, they said, look, when you come into the UK, sorry, I'll be using a lot of UK experience because this is what I've done. So obviously I know there are a few people in Canada and all of that, but I think there may be similar experiences. So they said to me, when you come into the country, this is kind of what people do. You just need to get on with it, take up some menial jobs, do this, do that. And they meant well. I hold no grudges against them for suggesting that. But they didn't know my journey. They didn't know where I was or what my own ambitions were. So I had to sit down at some point and ask myself, what is the minimum standard? Where am I coming from? What have I done? And how do I see myself going forward? So I decided to draw a line that, look, I will do any job, but it won't go beyond this level because I'm coming into the country as a professional. I'm not coming as a student. I'm not coming with other things that other people may need to consider. And obviously, I mean, there's no right or wrong approach to this. But at that point, I came in, I had some savings. My wife was working. So obviously, I was in a better position to sort of make this decision. And that's the point I'm making, that you need to sort of know where you are, where are you, and then where do you want to go? And so when you decide in terms of what are the kind of things you want to go, broad objectives in terms of how you want to move forward or what you want to do, you need to shut out the naysayers because I had a few of that as well. People saying, look, you're dreaming too far. That doesn't happen that way. When you come into the country, you have to pay, what's the word? I forget the word now, but you have to pay the price. Yeah, I understand you just don't move that way, but they were saying that the dream was, or where I was talking about, or the kind of things I wanted to do doesn't happen overnight. Granted, but that's really where I wanted to go. And that's where it eventually turned out for it to be. And I put in some comment here around a word that's been credited to Mandela, which is, it is impossible to be done. People will say it's impossible, don't dream too far, don't dream too high. You know, when you come into the country, take up this kind of job, do all of that. So you just got to look at yourself and decide where are you, where do you want to go, and then move towards that direction. And I just put something here, the trending hashtag. Of course, this is a Christian platform. What God cannot do does not exist. So these are the kind of things I will talk about in the discovery phase in terms of identifying exactly these key questions. So very quickly, I'll move on to the build phase. So the first thing I put here, Okwemiko talked about me transitioning across different functions, different career paths. And one of my key strengths has always been investing in myself. If I look at my budget around what I spend in terms of family upkeep and all of that, I think the second highest thing I've got on that is investing in myself. I try to read wide, I try to read broad. I always try, always taking up some course. I feel that it's almost as if I feel the need to always better myself. And I cannot overemphasize this point, because it is, I always ask myself this question. I sold life insurance at some point, and I used to ask people this question at that time: what's your most important asset? When I wanted to try and get people to sort of buy the life policy, and people will not want to buy the life policy at that point. That's a different story, I digress. But same principles is what I've sort of applied to my life all along. I'm always reading something, I'm always doing something. As you may have seen from my profile, I've got a couple of degrees, not because I'm going to use all of them, but it's just out of interest. I'm always inquisitive, always trying to find out about stuff. And I'll put in a few things there which can help. Google is free. We've got Udemy, YouTube. Spend time here, attend training courses, and then research that focus area. So for example, when I wanted to sort of take up a program management job, I spent some time researching what that meant. I've spent some time taking up courses. It cost me money, it was painful, but eventually paid off at the end of the day. And then build your CV is the next item within this build phase. Here, I struggled a bit in my experience because I was coming with a very broad experience, and it was a question of how do you fit that into what you want to do? Initially, I was almost doing like, you know what, cram everything onto the CV, you know, and let them choose what they want from that CV. My personal experience, that doesn't work. I was coming from with the feeling that, look, this is my experience. I need to reference everything. But I found out that, at least in the UK, from my own personal experience, they sort of like some sort of specialization. And so, and I know coming from Nigeria, where I had done so many things within that role. For example, I've done project management, program management within my roles in terms of delivery of certain things. So what I did was to reference that particular aspect of what I've done without actually espousing all the other stuff, because I had an interview once and the person was almost sort of doubting what I had done because he felt unreal. But I know where we're coming from, because it's not about just being a specialist in something. You need to do everything possible to deliver on your job. If that meant you're going to be a business analyst, project management, IT, whatever it was, you need to be that thing to deliver on your job. I mean, at some point I had done some projects. I'm not a finance person, but I was trying to deliver some project within finance and IT. And I had to go take up a finance course because I was being confused half the time in the meetings. And I felt, look, I need to be able to speak the language. So I went to take up a finance for non-finance managers. So is that sort of experience, that background I was bringing in, and that was just too much on my CV. And so I had to sort of trim it down to make it very, very focused. Another thing that I found out was I needed to sell myself. You know, and this is interesting because I've done sales, but I just written the CV in the way it was, but I needed to learn how to sell myself again. What were those things that I needed to put on my CV? What were those things that were key? What were those things that would grab people's attention? And so I had to do some research around there. Interestingly, some of it that we had used back in Nigeria, which was what is called the STAR approach, which is the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So I had to reframe my CV in that STAR approach so that I'm not giving the person, because again, people have a lot of CVs they get. They haven't got that time and that attention. So that CV needs to jump out. What are those things that need to be on that CV that when I read it, oh, this person knows he's done the work for me. He's done this, he described the situation, the task, and these are the results. This is a result-oriented person. If that's what the role requires, this is not for every role, and I'm not prescribing for every role. I'm just using it as an example. And what are those key things or those skill strengths that need to come out on your CV? And then you have a general one for application. And obviously you have to get it reviewed by someone. You need to identify someone within that field, somebody who's been in country more than you've done. That will help you review it and take out a few things here and there. I can speak more to specific questions as we go along. So the next phase is the implementation phase. And here comes to the job serve and application. How can one go about this? Very quickly, I had to understand the terrain because I didn't quite understand it. I've been coming to the UK visiting, but living is a different sort of experience. And so I had to understand how may one go about getting a job. And I found out that you've got the recruiters who dominate some of this market. And speaking to them takes a different kind of skill because they are the first gate. If you don't get past them, then you don't get to the hiring manager. No matter how good, no matter what it is, you don't even get through the door. So I had to understand, what are these recruiters looking for? How do I make it easy for a recruiter? How do I get past that first gate to the second gate of the hiring manager? And so that takes a different sort of approach in terms of, and it talks to this kind of CV you're looking for. Again, I had a couple of CVs which were referencing different parts of my experience. And so if this job was a program management job, I had it tailored towards program management. And so I wasn't giving that recruiter a lot of headache to try and be determining who am I or what am I doing. He was speaking specifically to that job. And so I would get those calls, fielding those calls, talking to them, understanding them was also something that I had to pick up along the way. Some of it you can't sort of give an idea of what it is. You just have to go through that process to understand it. And then if you find them too challenging, there are other routes into the company. Some companies have company portals where you can go and put your CV and it gets in front of the hiring manager. It doesn't need to go through this first gate. And so I had to find that out as well. I mean, for here, and if you're here in the UK, we had the NHS, which is a big employer, because I was looking at it that perhaps, I mean, people were saying things to me, I haven't got the UK phone, I speak like a Nigerian, I haven't got an English name. My name is Akin. I needed to go look for an English name. Yeah, it makes it easier for them. But I mean, if I had a second English name, perhaps, why not? But my parents didn't name me Bob or Tom. So why would I take up Bob and Tom overnight? You know? And I had an issue with that. I mean, it works for other people. I have friends who are bearing some English name now. Yeah, it works for them. So you know what works for you. I just felt, look, that's not my name. I've never been called any English name. I was going to use my name. And I felt Akin was easy enough to say. Anyway, I digress again. So I went to the job boards and I found out what was the biggest employer within the UK in terms of people that are recruited from all over the world. And I found a few of them, NHS and the likes. I'm like, all right, if they recruit from all over the world, whether I'm called Akin or called whatever doesn't really matter, you know, because they're already used to this sort of approach and all of that, rather than looking for places whereby my name, whatever, wasn't going to be a strength. Essentially looking at diverse organizations. And I started sort of cherry picking those ones and applying there. So again, do you want to go contracting or permanent? I would say permanent, to sort of what they say is enter the system, to sort of get into the system. There's a lot of money in contracting and all of that, but entering the system, understanding how things are, I would recommend permanent. But again, it depends on what comes. I mean, you can't, whichever one you get first, it's important to get a job and move on with it. So you find the recruiting agencies, submit your CV to their talent pool, talk to them. Some of those jobs, they'll post them. I'll pick up the phone. I will speak to them. Tell me more about this job. Whatever to do to differentiate myself, try and sell myself to them and all those kind of stuff. I got a lot of rejections. I'll come back to that in a minute. And then help them. Sometimes they send jobs to me because I'm on their list. I can't do that job, it's not for me, but I know someone who I think is better suited. I'll refer that person. Just something extra to sort of get myself, and when you help somebody, you're helping a friend, you're helping the recruiter. Obviously, it's about building long-term relationships. I've spoken about applying directly to the companies, and then seek out a mentor. It is very, very important. It doesn't have to be usually somebody that, is older than me. No. It's somebody who's more experienced. I had a lot of people that I spoke to, people who I had in terms of years of number of experience. I was much more experienced, but within that specific area, they were far more experienced than I was. And I sought them out because of that particular experience. And I learn from anybody and anybody at any point in time. So these are the sort of things I think will be happening during the job application. I've now put in a few of them here, but again, I know this is a global presentation, so I can share job sites at any if that is required, but that will be UK specific. There are a few of them that I think are global, but maybe things like Indeed.com. But we can talk about that as we go along. And then very importantly, depending on what your visa situation is, some of those jobs have got work visa requirements. I'll put in a link here that is UK related that allows you to sort of apply for specific jobs that can help with visa requirements, if that is the case. I've definitely seen people who didn't have visa or had some sort of visa that they needed some other visa, and it was as a result of the job they got, all of that was normalized for them. So it is possible. When you're doing the CV, think sniper shot and not scattergun. Believe me, I've been there. What do I mean? When I got in, I thought it was just numbers, or I couldn't believe it, or I think perhaps maybe it was hubris, maybe it was pride. Look, I've got all this experience. Somebody must want me. You know, I couldn't just understand it. So I just did it, application, wake up every morning like I was going to work, have my bath, sit down at the computer, get on the job site, apply till 1 o'clock. And then I know they take an afternoon break at 1 o'clock. I too will take a break, get back at 2 o'clock, apply. So you can understand the frustration that will come out at the end of that. Looking back, that wasn't the smartest thing to do. Sniper shot, CV well tailored to the job. Yeah, think quality, not quantity. Obviously, this helps. Learn the lingo where possible. That helps. So it gives you the opportunity to break down barriers when you learn the lingo in terms of what they say within that specific area. Each domain has got its own lingo, so it will help if you're able to speak that lingo. And then use of LinkedIn, very, very, very important. It's very powerful to search people up. So when I was talking earlier around, people had sort of told me I had to take up some menial jobs, and I didn't want to do that. What I did was I went to LinkedIn and I started seeking out friends I've not spoken to in a long time, people that were working in sort of industries I wanted to work in. And I reached out to them. Some were not even my friends, some were friends of friends, some were people that randomly I saw their profiles, and I'll just send them a message. Hi, my name is this, reach out to them. Some will respond, some will not respond, some will refer me, but it's a very, very powerful tool you can use. You can even reach out to marketers, sorry, marketers. You can reach out to recruiters directly, but you need premium, LinkedIn premium here. So if you see a job you like, you can actually message them directly and they will talk to you. It's a powerful tool I would recommend to anybody. Look for common friends in that company. So I want to apply to a company. I'll look for common friends. I'll say, look, could you refer me for this role? I'm interested in this role. We went to the same university. We went to the same stuff. We've got common friends, whatever it is. I will try and leverage every sort of relationship I have. Start posting relevant content around that area. So it's almost starts to make you think like, all right, this guy knows what he's talking about. It's relevant to this area. And then interact with thought leaders in that focus area. And I consider volunteering here. This is, I think, a very, very key point, because depending on where you are, you haven't got a job, because again, I said, I don't know where people are in this journey. If you come into country, volunteering is something that can be very useful and very helpful for you. One, it allows you to embed yourself into the culture very quickly, and it takes you out of the home. It allows you to start to do something. In there, where you're within the company and you're helping to work to resolve problems, all of that, they know you, they see your strength. It also allows you to see other opportunities that may not be apparent to people who are on the outside. And at least it allows you to have that feel of you're doing something. Some of it may be paid, some of it may not be paid. And so it's something I've just put there as something you may want to consider if you're looking at this. What I would strongly recommend for people who don't have what they're doing at the moment to consider volunteering. It may open up doors for you. Handling rejections. So I'd like to say this is going to happen. I'm not being negative, but you're going to get rejections along the way. You're going to get rejections, and so you need to prepare for it. It's just part of the process. It's part of the learning curve. For example, before I got the role, my initial role that took me and made me to enter the system, as we say here, I had done several applications, like I said to you, continuously, every day. And then a few of those things had materialized into first level, second interview, all of that. But I'll just talk about the ones that got me to the final level. So I got to the final level stage of interviews 12 times before I landed my first role. So you can imagine the mental strength you require, because you have to start again. You're at the final stage, and then for something they tell you no. Oh, we found somebody, this, we did that, we did whatever. It is difficult to take. It is extremely difficult to take. So you've got to prepare for this. And so what I always did at that point was to give myself time to process how I was feeling at that point and what that meant. And what I was doing at that point was to ask myself, all right, what did I do very, very well for this application? What did I do? What lessons can I pick? What did I do well in? How can I improve that? And so I would always come back, do that. And after a while, I'll ask for feedback. Some will give me feedback. Some will even say, after a while, it became so frustrating to me. They'll say, all right, there's nothing so, we haven't got any specific feedback, but we just felt we would, like somebody better, and I couldn't do anything with that. So some days, one may feel down, you may feel that, you may feel low, you may feel, what was really going on here. But you have to be aware of those feelings, and it's always good to have somebody you can talk to. If you're married, it helps because you can talk to your partner, you can talk to other people's colleagues or whatever it is. But it's always good to have somebody to talk to while you're going through that process. But you have to understand it's a learning curve. It is a learning curve. And looking back, each of those interviews, I learned something from them, or at least I felt there were things I could have done better. Perhaps some places I didn't speak the lingo, some places culture played part of it because I didn't understand the culture of small talk. I'll get back to that at some point. I'm always very direct. Coming from Nigeria, it's just direct, go straight and try and solve it. rather and sort of being measured in my approach. Power of networks. I put in a picture which, you know, I was used to sort of buttress this, and I looked at this migration process, and there's something called swarm intelligence, which allows them to do this mass migration as they move to, is this Serengeti, annually. So there is power in numbers. Connect, don't isolate. I know there's a tendency that I've just come in, I'm trying to do this, let me try and figure it out on my own. It's heavier that way, the load is heavier that way. Connect with people, like I said, go to LinkedIn, look for friends, family members who are already in that area, speak to them, tell them how did they do it, what are the sort of practical steps they can give to you. And then importantly, Nigerian community. I put this here because this is one of my bugbears, because I think we can do more as a Nigerian community. One of the statements that I received from people when I came in and it sort of broke my heart was, if you, not a lot of people told me to stay clear of Nigerians, and that if I were going to do well or sort of settle down appropriately, I needed to stay far away from Nigerians. And I just couldn't understand that, because I was looking at the Asian community, I was looking at the Jewish community, and I'd seen the sort of way they've helped people to integrate. And I just couldn't understand why the Nigerian community will not be home for me, will not be a safe place for me. And yeah, I know I'm a Nigerian, taking that we've got bad people, but I think within each community, they have bad eggs. And I think we need to do more, including myself. This is not to castigate the Nigerian community as a whole, because I did come across Nigerians that were very helpful in my journey. But I just think we need to do more, but that's the conversation for another day. Social media, I spoke about social media, Facebook as well. I talked about finding out and reaching out for mentors for advice. I joined a lot of WhatsApp groups, program management, EA, whatever. And I try to connect with people there. Alumni groups as well. And what I tried to do as well was to sort of make friends outside my normal circles. Yes, I spoke about the Nigerian community integrating into that. But beyond that, I also wanted to understand this terrain. I wanted to understand Rome, how do the Romans behave? So I sought out relationships with people that weren't necessarily like me, so that I could speak their lingo, I could understand what was going on. Because I saw this as a key deficiency in my own toolbox, and I wanted to learn that. So for example, common interest, football, I like football. I joined a local a group of guys who play football every Wednesday, hang out with them, speak to them, just sort of to try and understand their thinking, the way they behave, the way they speak. And it helped me a whole lot in my journey. And I put this here, I believe it is a recommendation economy. Recommendations do help. So for example, one of those roles I spoke about, I got to the final stage. I was recommended by a Nigerian who I had never seen. So this is why I'm saying that, you know, there's power within the Nigerian community. Someone had made a referral. When I had come in, I'd sent a copy of my CV, which was not what it should look like. It was an awful CV, to be honest. I sent it to this lady, and this lady just called me, I think it was maybe 6 months down the line or something like that. Anyway, and spoke to me and all of that, and spoke to people in our organization that I've got this guy, I think he can do this job, I've spoken to him. With that awful CV, I went through 5 stages of interview in that company. And the only thing that stopped me from getting that job was that at the last minute, the budget for that role was pulled. And I just felt God didn't want me to take up that role. But it was a learning experience.
But is like bursted. Is she still okay with it?
Who?
Melda?
Well, she wants eggs.
Yeah, scrambled eggs. I know what she usually gets.
Hello, I think
Rubber Weinstein. Cheese.
we need to be on mute.
Hammer.
Okay, can you put everybody on mute, please? Is it possible?
All right, thank you. So I'd gone through 5 stages, which was a very, very good learning experience because it was something I hadn't done prior to that time. And I think that prepared me for the next role that I was going to get. So recommendation works. Imagine me coming with that awful CV and going all to the last stage. It was just because this lady had said, look, I've spoken to this guy. Based on what they know about her, they know that she wouldn't, because they kept saying to me that, look, this lady is not going to recommend someone who's bad. And so on that basis, they spoke to me. That opened the door. So I was able to get through the first gate. It was after the first and second gate that the recruiter that they were using got in touch with me to get my CV. So I jumped the recruiter stage. If I'd normally gone through the recruiting stage, I would probably not have been shortlisted or spoken to at all because they would have looked at that CV and I would have said, look, you can't do this job or this CV is awful or whatever, and that gate would have been there. But just by this recommendation from this lady, I was able to jump through that and get in front of the hiring manager who was able to make an opinion of my skill set on his own before getting back to the recruiter. And so recommendation works. Is the key point I'm talking about. So interview process, just some general things I think I can put here so that in case someone wants to look at it, research the company, the culture, competitors, all of that. Always research the company. You have a lot of stuff on their website. At least I always get that question in all the interviews I went for. Prepare and ask intelligent questions. This is something I found that works for me because they will ask questions. It's also an opportunity for me to ask questions, not because I want to sound intelligent, but because the way I see it is a two-way feedback. Yes, I need a job, but I also want to know that is this company the right fit for me? So I think we're both interviewing ourselves. So I just also want to know a bit more. And I think it's an opportunity for me to get into that. And I think they always appreciate it from what I've seen. Prepare for the phone interview. If you're going to have a phone interview, the first stage recruiter, all of that, prepare like you have a face-to-face interview. Practice it with somebody, stay in front of the mirror, never imagine it in your head, prepare. Get comfortable in front of the camera. Of course, with COVID now, most things are remote. Speaking on camera is different from face-to-face. It takes some adjustment to that. The interviewer mindset, you know, they want to know, who are you? Are you competent? A few people who I've spoken to who have sat on the other side of the table tell me that within 5 minutes, they made up their minds, you know. So it's important to hit the ground running in terms of the interview process, answer the questions, be concise, don't waffle, all of that. And at the end of the process, send a follow-up email and a thank you note. Just thank them for giving the opportunity, whether you get the job, you don't get the job or not. I think that sort of leaves a very, very good feeling at the end of the day. So some sample questions, you know, you may want to ask, tell me about day-to-day responsibilities for this role. It allows them to talk to you a bit more about the role and helps you to frame the kind of answers you want to give. Can you tell me more about the team I'll be working in? What are the team dynamics, structure, reporting lines, all of that? What about the team and the culture? The biggest challenges facing the department right now, I love to solve problems. If I were to quantify myself in a way, I would say I'm just a problem solver. And so I always want to know what the biggest challenges are. And I think it also helps to sort of give an impression of the kind of person you are when you're asking what are the kind of problems you're facing. Again, performance management, what are the expectations for this role in the next first 30, 60, 90 days? You know, it makes them look at you like, oh, it's got a mindset of coming to deliver. And at the minimum, if you get the role, it allows you to shape expectations of what is required on that role. And then strategic thinking. Where is company heading next 5 years? Is this something you want to be or where you want to be? Okay, the last phase is sustaining phase. Culture is what I put here because I think culture is very, very important. I've spoken about it earlier in terms of seeking out to understand the culture. What I find interesting or funny at times is when a few of our friends get together and there's regular criticism. Oh, this is that, this is this. And I'm like, you came here and you're always free to go back. You're in Rome, you do like the Romans, keep your identity, but you got to integrate. You are here in another country. If you don't want to integrate, then why are you there? It's just a simple question to me. I mean, people like my friends disagree, but this is how I see it. And I think, like I said, immerse yourself into culture, retain your identity. Here in the UK, small talk is everything. You can really get to talk about the weather easily because the weather is quite, what's the word now? Unpredictable. So talk about the weather, talk about your holiday. If you got a pet, it's a fantastic way to break down barriers and start talking about them. There are sitcoms on TV all the time. If you watch one, they're just different areas of common interest you can get to and talk about. Be polite. This is one thing I've had to sort of learn myself or do better when I came here and had the opportunity to talk to people about. Simple things, please, sorry, and thank you. It is so important, so important. And I think it's an area where we all can do better. It helps to make things go better, definitely at workplace, in terms of relationships and all of that. Learn their idioms, here when they say rubbish, a friend of mine told me that, he got upset one day. He said, oh, that is rubbish, until they found out it's not an insult. A senior colleague who was married to someone from a different race told me that his wife said to him one day when he just got here that don't be daft, and he took offense. It took him a while to know that, look, depending on how it's used, it's not an abuse. So there are idioms like that they are being used. Learn them, know them, and all of that. Greetings, always great. Tea and coffee, it's a national hobby here in the UK, as I put here. It is good for socializing. Can we talk about this over tea? Can we talk about this over coffee? When you go, you're in a team, you're going to make coffee for yourself. Ask everybody, make tea, make coffee for everybody. It allows you to bond and to get yourself integrated better into the team. I don't know what works somewhere else. Something as well that you may want to do is around, if I go do shopping, I just buy extra sweets, biscuits, all of that, bring it to the team. Everybody's sharing all of that. If you know how to bake, for example, my wife does this, she likes baking. She will bake some cakes, take you out to work. It's definitely helped her a whole lot in terms of some of the more tricky relationships she's had to navigate. Learn ways of working, smart work, first impressions count. I want to talk about learn ways of working. So I recall my first experience when I was working. I just come straight from Nigeria, a lot of energy, get things done, all of that. I didn't quite understand the working environment. And so I started work on a Wednesday, as I remember, and my boss at that time, I just was part of his introduction, giving me, I think, 2 business cases that, look, we'll be dealing with this business case. Here it is, read it, all of that. Quite lengthy business cases. From where I was coming from, that meant that the next time I needed to see my boss, I needed to be on top of those business cases because we were having a meeting the next day. And he said, it's just preliminary meetings. So of course, when he said that to me, I go home, read those business cases, first time, second time, I felt I hadn't done justice to it. I was driving to work at that time because I think my work at that time was about 36 miles away from where I live. So I said, no, I wasn't going to drive. I got on the bus. So give me opportunity to read those business cases. Read them, back and forth, back and forth. So we got into the meeting. My usual, the Nigerian energy, I'm on top of this, all of that. So they were talking in the meeting and I was like, oh, here's Akin, he's just joined us yesterday. So you'll be getting up to speed, regarding what needs to be done, all of that. Me, Niger boy, getting up to speed. I'm up to speed already. So I said, no, hold on. I'm up to speed. I've read the business case, da. I just thought I was looking at me funny. He didn't say anything. That went. Friday, he gave me some strategic business case that had been done by a consulting company. And as you know, 400, 500 pages. And he said, look, this is a strategic context for a few of the things we're doing. Have it, at that time, it was just for reference purposes. I didn't see it that way. Weekend, I was reading, all of that, So on Monday, I got to work and it was like, oh, so Akin, how's your weekend? I mean, again, part of the small talk. I was like, I didn't quite have a good weekend because, I was reading this business case, I was doing the strategic case, I was doing this, I was doing that. And the guy just looked at me, I was like, no, Akin, no, that's not expected of you. No, we don't need that from you, Look, let me tell you how I spent my weekend. Almost as if you don't understand how to spend weekend, here it is, I took my kids to the park, I went kayaking, and then it just dawned on me that, wait a minute, what's going on with you? Then a separate colleague at that time called me and I just said, look, let's go for coffee and tea and all of that. And then he started talking to me and said, look, you need to be careful, you're going to start to make your boss to be sort of wary about you. You need to, he was speaking to me about that time. He said, frequency to hide you. In terms of, you need to tone it down. That's not required. And I interpreted that to be smart work, not all that kind of stuff. Again, prioritizing, and I put here nomad mentality because I've been transiting quite a lot among functions. And one thing that's always helped me is to think about it that, look, this function I'm here, I may not be here for a long time. So how do I make the maximum impact within the time period I've got? So that allows me to focus on what is important within that role and then start to try to address that very quickly. Be willing to go above the expected but not eye service. This is very key. I really found this very useful. In one of the roles that I did, I was reporting to two different managers and something for the team should have been done by a different manager and one other manager wanted us to let it be that way. It had nothing to do with me, to be honest, but I just felt this wasn't going to look good for the overall team. And the other manager was right because he was thinking, look, why do you have to take on this extra job? But I convinced him and I said, look, you know what? Let's do this job. It was a Friday evening. I was looking for eye service, nothing. I just wanted the team. I didn't want the team to look bad. I said, look, I'll put in the extra hours. You know what? Let me take up this stuff. Let me put this slide deck together. Let me do like a straw man. Let me just put things together and then we can take it from there. From about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we got around to about 5:30. Myself and him, couple of iterations, got us to 6:30 on a Friday evening. And then we had something that was very good. And then we were able to send to our exec at that time. I got home much later than I would have. And over the weekend, I got a text from my boss and he said to me, well done, good job. And I thought, oh, that was the end of it. When he was leaving that role and he was going somewhere else and I needed to transition again, he put in a word to the exec for me, just on the back of that particular day, telling the exec that this is your guy, he will do the job. And that secured that role for me. So be willing to go above the expected. think value, keep to time. I always like to be in 5 minutes before the meeting, never late for a meeting. I don't think it speaks well. If you cannot attend, give apologies. Or if you're going to be late, take nothing for granted. Take nothing for granted. They may not say anything. On a particular occasion, I was late for a meeting. I'd given apologies, all of that. I wasn't sure whether the apologies got noticed. But when I had the opportunity to speak, I apologized again and all of that. And it was at that point that I actually knew that they took notice. And so take nothing for granted. Finally, I would like to round up by putting a poem here by Langston Hughes, written in 1951, because one of my other areas of interest is poetry. My own spin on this is not the sort of negative view of what it is, but is asking a key question. What happens to dreams, to a dream that is deferred? To me, I see that as a call to action. The time is now. Do not wait for tomorrow or anything. You can always go forward. Take a step towards whatever dream or goal you want to do. Take that next step. Thank you for listening. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, all of that. Any questions? Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Akin. If you could put up your videos and give a shout out, a thumbs up, an acknowledgement, of all that is shared with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So can we please honor Mr. Osofisan by, just show of gratitude by saying thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So now it's time. Okay, so thank you. The thank yous are rolling in. Thank you so much, Mr. Osofisan. We are all grateful, as you can hear from everyone. So now we're going to be taking questions. Though I have a general question from our previous discussions in Camp Adulam, I'm going to put it forward, but you can answer it after you've answered individual questions. Because one of the key things that I picked while you were speaking, you said you were able to plan your transition. So one thing first was, you said you knew who you were and where you wanted to go. So that made it easy for you to ignore the naysayers. And also you had already planned like the strata of jobs that if push comes to shove, this is what I'm going to do. As in, okay, so this is the height of where I really want to go. But anyway, if I have to, I can do this, step 3, like, okay, step 4 is the height, but I could do 3, I could do 2, and certainly I could do 1. So it means that you had it planned. And also I would like you to speak, that's after we've taken individual questions. How long did it take, that transition? Because it sounded like you got the job that you actually wanted. Am I right? You got the kind of job that you wanted. Okay, yeah. So after we take individual questions, I would like you to please go back to that and then say to us the key things that you did. How you managed, there was a plan around it. You mentioned your wife is a doctor, because there's also the home finance. If you're talking to the married people now, and even to the single person also, there's a finance, there's a limit to which your settlement funds, can take you. There's a time limit to it. So I would just leave that at that. Please think about, get your answers for us ready. But now we'll take individual questions. So people, please, from what you've listened to, questions that are personal to you, that you do believe that Mr. Osofisan can provide, Akin Osofisan can provide the answers to, please ask your questions. The floor is open. I'm going to unmute. If you do indicate that you want to speak, I'm going to unmute them. You can unmute yourself. And please, just by show of hands, unmute yourself and ask your questions.
Yes, please, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hi, Akin. Thank you so much again for your time. This one you're typing, are you Googling my name? I don't understand what's going on there. Just answer the question first before searching me online. Please. Thank you again for the feedback you shared about the transition. So many things were relatable. But my own question now is about now you've gotten the job, you settle into the career, is how do you, especially with companies that are large corporates, right? Is how do you stay, is the word visible? You can add value, you're getting your job done, your manager says, oh yeah, I'm happy, but I've come to understand that with the British system, when they are smiling and saying they're happy doesn't exactly mean the same thing. So for me, it's like, how do I now stay visible to the key decision makers that will help take my career to the next level? I hope I was able to explain that. After you finish Googling me, then you can answer the question.
Okay. Thank you very much. I relate to that question 100%. What I would say is this, or what I actually have done is to sort of seek out who those key decision people are, seek them out to see, all right. So for example, within an organization I work, I found out who were the executives and what were the sort of programs they were involved in. And I sort of made sure that every time I had an opportunity of being in contact with them via maybe a program or speaking group, and I had the opportunity to speak, first of all was, without being vain, I made sure that my dressing was different so that I will call attention to myself without being over the top.
Mhm.
I would try and dress and look the part.
Mhm.
I would try and make my point very clearly within that point. And then it's really sometimes difficult within large corporates because your line manager is almost the alpha and the omega.
Mm.
And so if you're able to solve that line manager's problems primarily, without even, let's give the bigger ones, the line manager primarily, if you're able to solve additional problems for that person, chances are the person would sort of put you forward or speak to you as it was in my own case. And I didn't know at that point I was doing it. So some of this is hindsight. It wasn't sort of planned. But what I always try to do is to look for additional things I can do along with work. It hasn't got to do with work. So they've got a body network. I'll offer myself up. They've do a training and they're doing the trainer. I would sort of become one of the trainers. So it's another additional platform for me to showcase myself. So there isn't any sort of one size fits all, but I'm just sort of prescribing a few things or a few thoughts in terms of how you want to go about it without actually being doing eye service.
Okay. So if
I
I'm
hope
hearing,
that helps.
yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying beyond doing what the job is, do the extras that is important to the organization, really.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, Akin. Thanks very much for the presentation. Very well presented. Okay, so my question really is, and I think I thought that some of your slides were very, very useful. But coming from the point of view of probably someone who does a lot of contracting jobs, I noticed that there was a bias for those in the permanent sector or those who were working permanently. So for instance, some of your slides talking about, how to present. I mean, if your contract term is just for 6 months, then it's 6 months. Do you know what I mean? So can you put a spin on the contracting for those who are contracting, for instance? And I know that in certain organizations, you can only contract there for like maybe 2 years, after which there's a cap. And there's no, the business can't really make that argument for you. So for those who are in the contracting position, who maybe are just coming in and are just starting, or maybe even contracting for those who are transiting and just moving into the country, and that is easy, probably a much more easier sell to start off with than to go into the permanent sector itself. So if you could talk a bit more about that, especially for those who are also listening, so they can get some tips on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Modele. And you're spot on in terms of your analysis around the bias in the presentation. It was intentional.
Okay.
So because I can only speak so much about what I know a whole lot about and not about. So within the contracting space, I don't know too much, but I've got friends who are into contracting. But what I would say around the question you asked is, having been moving certainly within an organization across different functions, I will sort of relate it to the contracting mindset. And I've put something around what I put called the nomad mentality in terms of, I'm not going to be here for long. So what is the maximum possible way I can create value? What is important to this role? What is very important to that role? And how do I deliver that? That's one. Stakeholder management, again, is very key because you are going into an environment, your performance will be determined by a couple of key things. Of course, your delivery and your relationships within that role. I talked about setting things around relationship management, understanding the culture, speaking the language. So understanding the culture, understanding.
Okay, I'm going to get to that.
So yes, so understanding the culture, the small talk, that lingo, because it goes beyond. So for example, initially when they'll be asking me a question, like, why are you asking me this question? You know, what's your business about? Let's get to the work. I just want to do the work and go. That was the wrong approach. I didn't understand the environment. So that's one of the things that I will speak towards the contracting, and understand the environment, understand the stakeholders you're dealing with, understand how you want to create value. And one thing I found out is that everyone loves a bit of chocolate and sweets. So I always come in with chocolates, not that I'm bribing anybody, chocolates, sweets, and all of that. It just helps make the relationship smoother, in my own view. I don't know if I've answered your question, Modele.
You have. Thank you very much. I like the tip on the chocolates and sweets. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so do we have anyone by show of hands? If you do have any questions, please by show of hands, unmute yourself and then ask your question. Campus
Are you going to
at
make me go? Are you going to make me go that easy?
Campus at Adulam. We don't want to do roll call here, do we? Okay, 3 participants raised their hand. Whose hand is raised? There's somebody else whose hand is raised. Okay, Ivy, are you there? Adenike.
Bolale has her hands up.
Bolale, please unmute yourself. Yes, I was trying. Okay, yes, Bolale. But I can't find. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Bolale, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes,
okay,
I can.
All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Akin. I really, really enjoyed your presentation, number one. Number two, it was very, for me, very, like you didn't try to sound like you knew it all or I don't know the English to use. You sounded, I was able to relate with what you had presented, right? And so my question is, so for someone that is not necessarily, so for me, I'm not necessarily just getting into the job market, but transiting from a different career path to another. So like for you now, I saw that you sold insurance and then you went to IT and all that. How are you able to move industries? Was I able to make any sense? I don't know.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Bolale, for your kind comments and your question. Again, I'll just share from what I know or what I think. Moving industries is challenging. Transition is challenging in itself. And what I'll say is that if you know in terms of what industry you want to go to, the first place I usually start from is research. Ask myself around who are these people in this industry? What does it look like to be successful in this industry? and have that picture painted in my mind first. Like, all right, this is what success in this industry looks like. These are the key players there, or the key people I know, or do I even know anybody there? What's, you know, just general questions around that industry I want to get into. What are the things that are required from this industry? Google will tell you, LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. And I hear you loud and clear in terms of you've got experience in certain other areas and you want to move to another area. I would say no experience is lost. You've got to leverage that experience. So for example, I don't know, maybe you're working in the health sector, for example, and you want to move to the finance sector. One thing they have in common is they're both regulated environments. So that could be a strength in terms of, you know, key thing to call out in your CV. I've worked in a regulated environment. Stakeholder management, common across all day, every day. So just to sort of look for things that are similar from your own experience that you can use to leverage to go into that other industry. And then mentorship in that area, someone who has walked the walk, who knows what they're talking about in that area, try and make friends with that person. They will tell you essentially how to make that transition. Those are the things I'll say at this point, if that helps.
Thank you, Akin. Do we have any other person with a question? Ivy, would you like to ask the question? Adebola, you got on early, very early. You were the first person at the meeting. So I would assume that you've had a lot of time listening. Do you have any question for for Akin Osofisan?
Sorry, I'm at the store. Thank you so much thank you so much for the opportunity. Like you spoke right on point. And my question, the question I would have asked, the last person asked it, because I'm also trying to transition from like a healthcare kind of field to more of IT project management. So the question I would have asked was the last question that was asked. So I don't think I have any other. But Mr. Akin did a great job by, you know, simplifying everything without, like someone said, without saying things like he knew too much, you know, like giving false information. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Adebola, for those kind comments. If I may add to that, since you mentioned project management, one thing that may be useful is to sort of get certified in that area, or at least to sort of read up. I'd shared Udemy, I can share some other sites. You know, some of them are free, some of them are low fee paying, that at least can allow you to get into what is being required and the lingo that is being spoken about, that will allow you to shape your previous experience into a project, because almost everything, as I say, is a project, you know?
Yeah.
If you think about it that way.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I actually do have, I've been on this journey since 2019. Unfortunately, COVID didn't do me well, but I just believe I'm still in God's plan. But I was laughing earlier when you were saying you got through to 12 last stage of interviews before you landed that one. So I'm at that phase where I can identify with that statement, because I'm at that phase where I've gotten all the certification. I actually had a contractor for like 4 months. It's just now trying to get into something more full-time and more consistent and stable. So that's where I'm at. But of course, more additional resources that you are able to provide are really appreciated.
Okay,
thank you, Adebola. Okay, Akin,
thank you, Adebola. No.
Okay, so thank you, Adebola. Any other person from Adulam? Questions that we've carried over from conversations?
Hi, so it's not really a question. I think it's more an affirmation of the steps that were shared during the presentation, especially when it comes to small talk, LinkedIn, as well as, you know, how to handle rejection, because and I don't know how, like for a lot of people, like for me, somebody already like managed my expectations and told me, hey, you might have rejections, and to a large extent, it may or may not be because of you. But always seek feedback, and sometimes you take it for granted, but when you have like multiple rejections, then you start wondering and asking yourself, are you okay? Is it that you don't know how to interview? Is it that you don't know how to speak good English? Like you just start questioning yourself, like, and if you're not careful, you could go through down like a dark part of slight depression. And so it's very good to talk to someone, just like Akin has said. It's very critical, like just to share with people, and small talk is great. If it's something we can learn, that has helped me as well. So for me, it's more an affirmation of everything that has been said. And LinkedIn is an amazing, amazing, amazing place. The jobs that I actually got were referrals from people that I met on LinkedIn. Some were people that I knew I'd worked with in the past, and some people I just reached out to say, oh, I'll give you a funny example. I met someone in a community and they were interviewing in their organization. And I'm like, oh, do you have like a few minutes to talk through how the interview process runs in this organization? Luckily, she was the one who was hiring for that role. And she just said, you know what, you're in this community. I've seen you comment to a number of like instances. I'm just going to reschedule you for an interview. And that's how I went through the first step.
Wow.
So it's very critical to make that connection and to meet people. Sometimes it might get you a job, sometimes it may not, but if you broaden your scope and broaden your network, that is valuable for you even when you do get that job. So yeah, thank you so much for everything you shared. You're spot on.
Thank you, Ivy. So we have just about 4 more minutes. Is any other person?
Yes, please.
Can I say something? Okay, sorry.
Thanks a lot for the presentation, Akin. My name is Kingston. I just wanted to say that, yeah, his experience totally resonates with mine in terms of coming into the country and trying to get a role. But there's one part of it that I really want to emphasize, which is the place of volunteering, right? It's something that practically has helped me in my own journey, right? I started out, my story is, I would just focus on this side, but there's a lot that I could talk about relating to coming in and looking for jobs that I've learned, just as he has said, so I could totally relate. But that volunteering side really helped. I lost my job during the COVID period. And then, of course, nobody was hiring. You know, everyone froze hiring. Organizations were not, even those that had roles open, when you approach them, they tell you, well, right now we've frozen everything, because as that initial phase in March last year, April, nobody knew what was going on. And what I did was, an organization I had volunteered with the previous year, they were now looking for someone to help manage operations and do some project management work. And I knew the organization I had volunteered with, and I put my hand up and I got that role. That was a role that sustained me from around July till the end of the year, when I got a new role and started in January this year. You know, but it was based on the precedents they had of me when I did work for them for free in the past. That came through for me during the crisis period, right? And not only does it help, it also helps you to fill the gap in your CV. You don't want to have like 7 months unemployed and people start doubting you. Nobody would ask, were you paid or not? If you were not paid, if you were paid, they don't know, you were working. What you need to put there is, this is the work I did, this is the value I added. So hope it helps somebody. That's what I just thought to share. Just to emphasize the volunteering aspect, it could really be useful. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kingston. That was very helpful. Thank you. Do we have one last person? We have about 2 more minutes because we need to go off before it's 1 for the next thing that we'll be using the Zoom room.
The only thing I had to say is to say thank you to Mr. Akin. please, wherever you are, keep being authentic. Like with this kind of presentation, it would help a lot of people, right? Because you're just doing true, real, authentic, everything. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. So there's a large vote for volunteering. Any other person before we say farewell? We have just 1 minute to go. I'd like to thank everybody on the meeting. We had, hello, Nika, please, Adenike, please go ahead and ask your question quickly.
No, I'm just clapping.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it was show of hand for claps. Okay, so I'd like to thank everyone doing a roll call. Bolanle, Modele, Anusoya, Akin, Osofisan himself, Toyin, Femi, Professor Jegs, Adebola, Rufus. I'm going by the display names: Damola, Ayomide, Shola, Moji Adeniji, Kingston, Oluyemi Adekoye, Jessica Otiono, Adenike Shitu, Fadeke, Ayodeji Lori, Sheyi, Ali, Tola, Oma, Ivy, Adeoye Adeshino, and Buki. Thank you so much for being part of this meeting. Thank you for making it very worthwhile. And thank you, Akin Osofisan, for sharing from your heart. That did come from your heart, not from your mouth, not from your bowels, but from your very heart. And we're all grateful. So here is where we say goodbye, everyone, and take the lessons with you, and the blessings will come. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for having
Thank you
me.
very much. Thank you, Akin. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.